Welcome to Jumping Bomb Audio.
It is time once again to talk about Joshi Pro Wrestling. I'm Aaron Bentley. I'm joined by my good friend Taylor Mainberg to talk Joshi. What's up, Taylor?
How's it going? I'm very excited to be here. We're talking about three very different and fun shows today, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's still, pandemic hours here on Jumping Bomb Audio, unfortunately. Now, there were some shows that happened that we're going to talk about, but the meat of this show is going to be continuing to go through the beginning of Stardom. If you haven't watched yet, you can stop listening now and go check out 212.11 and 227.11, the second and third ever Stardom shows. We're going to talk about those. And the Sendai Girls show from July 2, 2016, which is available on independentwrestling.tv. And if you use the code Sendai, you can get a 5-day trial, so you can watch it for free. So that's what we're going to talk about if you aren't aware yet. But if you've already seen them or you just want to listen and don't care, then proceed, my friends. So that's what we're going to talk about. If you want to reach out to Taylor and or me, you can find us on Twitter at JBombAudio. I think we've been doing a little bit better job about using the Twitter account.
I did live tweet the recent Marvelous show, but it happened in the middle of the night. I think it was something like it started at 12 midnight Eastern time. So I don't know if a lot of people saw it, but I agree. We are doing a little bit better.
It's, slow and steady progress. We don't want to just go all out from the beginning.
We can't be very impressive right out of the gate because then we don't have any room to grow and improve, really.
Exactly. If you want to reach out to us separately, I'm at Aaron Like the Car. Taylor is at TAMAIMBO. Taimambo.
Correct.
That's how I like to pronounce it. You can subscribe to the show. Please do. You search Jumping Bomb Audio on the podcast app of your choice, or we're part of the Voices of Wrestling podcasting network, and you can subscribe to that and get this show along with all the others. If you're using the Apple Podcast app, we'd appreciate if you rated and reviewed the show. So if there are, any other Joshi fans out there in the world, they might find this podcast. And if you want to donate to the show, you can go to redcircle.com/shows/jumping-bomb-audio. No big news, really, this week, I don't think, Taylor.
No, there was news that All Japan is thinking, or at least there's some thought that they may be starting a women's division. Suwama had an interview out recently that talked about, discussed the success of women in WWE and mentioned that they were possibly scouting women's wrestlers for their own division. That's all we really know from that interview, and obviously with everything going on, those plans may be put on hold as these sort of smaller, non-corporate backed promotions just are trying to sort of get through to the other side of this. So who knows if that happens, but it was mentioned. That's the only sort of tidbit of news that happened recently.
And there are a handful of shows happening. Now, they're all with no fans, largely like dojo-type shows. And I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Taylor, but to me it feels like they're not essential shows. Would you agree with that characterization?
Yes, I would agree with that. I think that most people, maybe with the exception of Ice Ribbon, who, as I'll mention in a few minutes, has reintroduced a title and are doing a title tournament. So that's a little bit more, essential in terms of storylines or things like that. But most shows are just sort of running Little shows, just fun things. Marvelous, for example, I'll talk about in a minute. They ran a show last week. It was only an hour. It had 2 matches. It was just sort of for fun. They did it in their JoJo. So, yeah, I would agree. Most shows are, if you miss them, you're not missing huge plot advancements or storyline movement in any way.
All right, well, what have you been keeping up with? I think it's basically everything, but you want to tell us about some of the shows that have been going on?
Yeah, so Choco Pro, which is the spinoff of Gato Move, has been still running shows. Those have been a lot of fun to keep up with. They're very quick to get through. Usually the entire show is about an hour and a half, but only about an hour, maybe a little bit less of that, is actual wrestling. They usually have 3 matches or so, and then they do a Jonkin tournament at the end of the actual wrestling, which Jonkin, for those who don't know, is the Japanese rock, paper, scissors. So they do that, and then sometimes they have extra, they might have an interview at the end with a guest who happens to be on the show, but those happen sporadically. I'll talk about it closer to the end of the show as we talk about upcoming airings when the next few shows are, because they've announced their next 3 shows as of the time we're recording this. But those have been a lot of fun, easy to get through. They sort of have a very jovial mood about them. So to me, they've been, of all the shows that have been happening, of all the promotions I've watched, they're the easiest to get through, and they're the ones that I look forward to the most as they air. Ice Ribbon has also been doing shows at their dojo with no audience. They are running a tournament for the IWGQ title. The IWGQ title is a returning title for Ice Ribbon. It was the main title of an old streaming show that Ice Ribbon used to have called GQ O'Clock Girls. It was a streaming show on Ustream, which was an old, I don't even know if they're still around anymore, but an old streaming platform. In 2013, there was a unification match between the IWGQ title and the Ice Infinity title. So that title went away, but it has now returned, and they are doing a tournament they have one block that is people who were around back when the title existed and competed for the title, and they have one block that is people who never competed for the title, who either weren't involved or debuted after that title was unified with the main title. So that'll be fun. It'll end up in 3 triangle ribbon matches, which are 3-way matches, and then it will come down to 2 finalists. So they're in the middle of that now. They've been running shows every Saturday that go on their Nico channel and on YouTube. And you can catch that on demand on YouTube for a few days after those shows air. Then they take them down, and they usually upload the first match or 2 to YouTube for free. So if you want to check that out, you can do that on YouTube for free. Seedling actually uploaded their March 23rd show to YouTube. That was a show that we talked about on this show before it happened. We didn't know whether it would air anywhere, and I don't know that if all of this stuff had happened, if it would have aired anywhere. It was a show in Shinkiba. It was one of their smaller shows with only 4 matches. But they have put those all up on their YouTube, so you can check those out. They're in the individual matches, so if you only want to watch the main event or the semi-main event, you can do that. One thing to be aware of that sort of caught me off guard with that is that they have made the decision to put their theme music as a bed of music underneath the entire match. So as you're watching the match, you'll hear this guy in the background singing, which to me was slightly distracting. I'm not sure why they did that. Maybe it was a rights thing or something like that. But 4 matches that I very much enjoyed with some good drop-in. Sakushi from Ice Ribbon is part of the high-speed match. And it really kicks off what would have been the next segment of the Seedling storylines, which is Arisa Nakajima against her former stable, the Selfish Strawberries. So check that out if you want. And finally, Marvelous has started doing shows from their dojo. They did the first one last weekend, April 25th, on Fresh Live, which is their streaming platform, freshlive.tv. And that's about an hour show. They had 2 matches, just sort of a fun diversion. And they've announced that they're going to do those shows every other week on Saturday. So that is another thing to look forward to. You can catch that old show on Fresh Live or catch the future shows also on Fresh Live. So that's what's been going on.
All right, that is the joshi that has been happening. Frankly, Taylor, if people don't listen to this, don't know, I do the Everything Elite podcast, so I kind of have to watch AEW every week, and that's like enough no fans wrestling for me forever. 2 hours a week. I'm over no crowds. I'm over stuff without like super high stakes. It's just I'm mostly watching a lot of old wrestling, to be honest.
And I think we talked about this before we recorded, but I've sort of had I haven't really been in love with the no fan wrestling. As I mentioned, I think Choco Pro has done the best with it as they've kept the shows sort of short. They have English commentary on it. They do a few things, so it's not just, wrestling. And it's sort of a lighthearted way to pass an hour. It's not 2 hours or 3 hours of a show. But I have actually found it very difficult to get into older wrestling because to me, it doesn't connect. Something in my brain, I watch it and I'm like, hey, I could maybe watch, this old show. Really, the only old wrestling I've really enjoyed watching are these Stardom shows and the Sendai Girls show that we've watched for recording this podcast, because I feel like starting at the beginning of the promotion has been exciting for me as a period of time I didn't watch or I was not a fan of when it originally began. So I've sort of had the opposite reaction to you, although I do agree that I do wish that we could see some full arena matches full of fans. There is something that is missing. Even though these promotions are trying very hard, they're really going above and beyond to provide things for us to watch. There is something missing from these no fan shows.
Yeah, Taylor and I had a big discussion off the show the other day about, I was saying I was really enjoying this time in a way because I could just kind of watch whatever I felt like watching. And Taylor, your response was more, God, I hate this. There's nothing to watch.
I think also I feel sort of crushed by the option. It's almost like people talk about browsing on Netflix, where you go on Netflix and you're like, I have thousands of options. And then you become paralyzed by the fact that you have so many options that you can't choose anything. And I think that's part of it for me, which is that I have so many. I mean, there's so many options now between people putting things on YouTube, and I have DVDs, and people are offering shows on Twitter for download that I'm downloading, and there's so many options that I can do that sometimes it's just like, I just wish there was a live show with fans. It's like, this is what you should watch because it's new, you don't know what happens, and that's what you should watch, because it really simplifies it in my brain rather than me saying, well, do I want to watch this show, and then I could, go in order and watch a bunch of shows. Do I want to watch this random show? It's just too many options for my brain to handle.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't know, a couple of things have just leapt out to me that I've chosen, but for another project, I was reading some old wrestling observers recently, and I was reading the part where people are like asking each other, for tapes that they were trying to trade. And it almost makes you long for those days of like, if this were happening in like 1994, I would just be able to watch whatever I had. Whatever tapes I had is what I would watch.
Or you would get like one tape from someone every 3 or 4 weeks, and that would be the thing you would watch because you would probably have been waiting for it, very highly anticipated that you would get whatever the video you would get from, some stranger who lives 3,000 miles away or something.
Yeah, what a world. I missed out on that part of wrestling fandom. I was like too young, I guess, when it was mostly going, and then I was out of wrestling for a long time. So by the time I got back into it, it was pretty much, you could find stuff on the internet. So I kind of missed out on that era.
Yeah, I was at the tail end of it, and I have some DVDs that I got, but part of it also was during that era, I was not as tuned into everything as I am now, which is partly because of the internet. It's much easier to find information about different promotions. So oftentimes I would get things that, people would be like, hey, Noah's really great. And so I would just get 5 Noah shows, but I had no background for what any of this was. So I'd watch them and be like, well, I don't really know what's going on. I don't know who most of these people are. So it was a little bit tricky unless you were really, tied in. I was not, 15 years ago when I was in my teens, I was not subscribing to the Wrestling Observer, which probably would have helped. So I was sort of out of the loop and just on my own trying to figure out, what was good and what I wanted to see.
Well, that's been one of the good things, as you mentioned, about us starting the Stardom series from the very beginning. So we've picked up some notes that are helpful, but otherwise you kind of just get to see the people grow as they did from the very first show. So that's been a lot of fun for me, I think, as you have said, and I hope we have live crowd shows soon. But even if we don't keep talking about these Stardom shows on the show every episode, I will probably just keep watching these for fun, and maybe we'll be able to do something else continuing to cover these after wrestling is back in earnest.
Yeah, I've really, as I mentioned, I've actually probably the Stardom shows are the thing I've enjoyed the most in terms of watching older wrestling since this all began. And I think part of it is it's very easily accessible. You go on Stardom World and they're all there. And also, as we'll mention probably shortly, these shows are very short. They're very easy to get through. I think the second show, the 227 show, maybe had 40 minutes of in-ring stuff. So they're very easy to get through. They're not a long haul, all afternoon or all evening dedication to sit down and watch them.
Absolutely. Now, I will say, I think these are pretty heavily edited, the best I can tell. So
the second show is definitely edited, and we'll talk about that. But
so I think there's probably more of this show that exists out there somewhere, but we didn't get to watch it. So we'll start with the second Stardom show. This happened on February 12th, 2011. They're back at Shinkiba First Ring. I noticed that they lost a pretty decent percentage of their crowd. They went from 466 fans for the first show down to 312 for this show in the same building. So that's a little unfortunate.
And one note about the last episode, we were talking about what is the capacity of Shinkiba. We weren't sure. I actually looked it up after we were done. The highest claimed attendance in the building is a New Japan show in 2007 claimed 483 fans. Now, I'm not sure if that was back at a time when New Japan was fudging their numbers. It certainly is possible that they were. But even if they weren't, that still says that that first New Japan show, which was in the mid-4s, was pretty close to being totally packing the building entirely full, if not being totally full.
Yeah, the real number is probably between like 415 and 450 or something, if just guessing.
Yeah, I don't know if there's ways that they can sort of shove extra seats in there if they're really, really full. Having been in the building a number of times, I'm not sure where those seats would be unless you added something like 4 rows to the floor seating, which would make things very crammed and very tight for everyone sitting down there. I don't know if that's possible, but yeah, they were probably in there totally full at that point.
My funny story about Shinkiba is we reserved tickets through Momo Watanabe, of course, for the Stardom show that we went to. And we needed 4 tickets. And we got there, and you got Sonny, and he's passing out the tickets. All the foreigners are lining up to get their tickets. And I give him whatever. I don't remember exactly what you have to give him, but I give him my thing. I tell him my name. He looks it up, and he's like, just wait a second. And I'm like, holy shit, what's wrong with my tickets? I've flown all the way to Japan for this show. And he talks to somebody, and they leave, and they come back, and they do something. And he's like, okay, here it is. This is where your seats are, or whatever. This guy will show you. And so we got in there, and they clearly had only reserved us 3 seats and had to add another seat to the row to give us 4 seats. So it was pretty funny.
Yeah, I think now at this point, I've sat about in every sort of section of Shinkiba that you possibly can. And there are some sections in there where it is tight. It is tight on a lesser attended show. I've been there for some shows that probably only had 200 or so people, and you're still a little bit crammed in there. So I can't imagine being in there with 400 plus people in that building.
Yeah, we were in the section, if you're coming out of the ramp, to the left of the ramp.
Yeah, I think when I saw a Stardom show there, I was in the same section. You mean looking at the ramp, or if you were literally coming out on the ramp?
If you were walking out on the ramp.
Okay, we were on the right side for the Stardom show I saw there, but still it's a similar view and similar section.
We were pretty comfy, but we were in the first row. So, there wasn't a lot of cramping to be done, I suppose.
Right. I sat once, I went to a J stage show there, and I sat on the first row of the risers that are on the other side. And it's the place where everyone who's on the risers has to walk by in order to get to the risers. So I spent a lot of the show turned to the side, letting people in, which was not great, but it was a great show, and I had a great time because, you're in Japan and it's very exciting and you can't believe it. But that was probably, of all the times I've been there, probably the least desirable spot I've sat in.
You were also there for a J Stage show.
Yes, which was a great show. It turned out really fun. I always say, when people ask me about going to Japan, I say, if you're a wrestling fan, even if you follow whatever promotions you follow, I say, if there's a show on a night and you're free and you're debating, should I go to the show? I always say go to the shows. I've been to some weird, I went to that J Stage show. I went to a Hard Hit show. It's how I discovered YMZ, which is that they were running a show when I was in Japan. I had never even heard of them and just decided to go because I happened to, I was like, might as well. And I went and I had such a good time. So I recommend anyone who goes to Japan, take a chance on maybe a promotion that you've never watched before, because you may find that you have a new interest. And ever since then, I followed YMZ. So that's, stayed with me even 3 years after I first saw them randomly on, I think, a Friday night or something in Japan at Shinkiba.
My greatest regret of my Japan trip was that I was able to talk my wife into doing like 5 wrestling shows, and 2 of those were New Japan shows. And it was fun to be in the Tokyo Dome for Wrestle Kingdom, and I enjoyed being there when Naito got his big win and all that. But if I could have only done one of those shows, I think I would have been more than happy.
Yeah, the Tokyo Dome is a place that, obviously I understand the significance and the history of wrestling, but it's not a place that really has ever interested me from a perspective of wanting to go and see wrestling there live. I'm someone who likes to be close, who likes to have good seats. And obviously at the Tokyo Dome, that's a lot harder because of how big the space is. So it's something that it's never really called to me as something I need to do. I much prefer going to Japan and sitting in Shinkiba for 2 weeks because, you're close. It's it's a very nice venue. Every seat is a good view to me. So I highly prefer the intimacy of sort of smaller shows over the grandiose nature of seeing something at the Tokyo Dome or the bigger venues.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I definitely will spend more time at the smaller venues watching Joshi my next trip, assuming they ever let Americans back in the country. Okay.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yes. I mean, you couldn't blame them, really. So getting back to the Stardom show from February 12th, 2011, leading up to this, there was a press conference on January 25th, and Nanai said, I'm sure referring to Yusuke Aikawa, that there was swelling on her face, and we received complaints from various quarters.
Yeah, she talked about how they had received some complaints, but that her goal was to, that she was now a professional wrestler, and the goal was to really put her through, the ringer and really test her in terms of being a wrestler. She came from the world of modeling, but when you're in a wrestling ring, you're a wrestler. You're not a model. So, those complaints were sort of brushed aside by Nanai.
Well, she was in the very first match on this show from February 12th, taking on Eri Susa, who struggled a little bit her first go around. And, it's just watching this just made me come even more to grips with the fact that Aikawa was just a fucking star, man. I mean, this is a slightly edited match, I think, and Aikawa wins with a Northern Light suplex. But she just, obviously from modeling, she probably got some of the ability to project herself, some charisma, some self-assurance, but she really comes across as a big star and looks at home in a wrestling ring.
I thought the in-ring stuff was a little bit clunkier than obviously the tag match, but that's sort of to be understood that she's going from facing Nanai, very talented veteran, to going to facing Eri, who was a rookie having only one match at this point, and as we discussed last time, very nearly not passing her pro test in time to take part in the first show. So it was a little bit more clunky, but she definitely has, as you mentioned, the air of someone who is a big deal, who is a star. And separately, I just want to mention, I had brought up last time briefly that something about Sousa's outfit was strange to me, and I figured it out this time. It's that she's wearing shorts, and one part is just a regular short, and the other side of it is like a skirt. I found that very odd. I don't know. Not a good look for me, and I think I was going to ask you this at the end, Aaron, and maybe we can do it at the end after we review the shows. But in terms of sort of ranking after 3 shows, ranking the rookies of Stardom, I think it's fairly clear that Eri Sousa is sort of a distant last place, for me at least. I don't know if you agree.
Okay, let's definitely do that after the shows because I have some thoughts.
Great.
I made some notes also on this, so that'll be good to get into. Next up, we had Passion 7 taking on Haruka. And again, we go to a 3-minute time limit draw for Haruka.
She's sticking in there. I think she's a great wrestler. She has a lot of... she's obviously very skillful. I mean, I think she's sort of held back by the fact that she's absolutely tiny and she's 8 years old. But she clearly shows some promise. I mean, I'm watching this match as, unfortunately knowing that in 8 months she leaves the business. But I sort of wish that she would come back and see if, could she be good? I think she could based on how good she is here, but, you never know. Another strange thought I had strange thoughts throughout the whole show. Passion Sevens was wearing a mask that the top seemed to be reminiscent of flames. And I was just wondering if the implication is that her hair is a flame or her whole head is a flame, like Ghost Rider or something. What do you think, Aaron?
I can't say that I really thought about that, Taylor. I'm going to be honest with you. I guess we could assume that she is a flame with passion. You know, her passion is so intense that she's set on fire with her passion for something. I'm not sure what her passion is for, to be honest.
Well, probably wrestling, I would imagine.
I would think so, but it's not clear. I mean, it's not completely spoken what her passion is.
That's true, and she might not be that passionate about wrestling if she can't beat an 8-year-old in 3 minutes. So
yeah, that's concerning for sure. I also agree that Haruka was great here. Her yelling at Passion 7 to give up in like the armbar or whatever she had on her, that made me laugh very hard. I thought that was very funny, very good. Because obviously Passion 7 is much bigger than she is. And I thought they did a better job this time with Passion 7 kind of healing a little more. And she had the throat strikes that really got the crowd behind Haruka. So, I don't know what it says about me that I enjoy watching wrestling matches with 8-year-olds, but I truly enjoyed this.
Yeah, I agree. It was very good again.
Next up was Mika Nagano taking on Mayu Iwatani. And this was Nagano got the win with the cross arm breaker. I just think she is like so good. I'm so excited about Mika Nagano at this point in her career.
I was so baffled, though, why after the first show she had that sort of cool, very unique gear that they put her sort of in the more generic idol gear. I don't know if maybe the first show they didn't have time to make her gear and they were like, just go out there in your MMA. But I thought that it made her look very unique against all of these other sort of idol-based wrestlers. So I was a little bit bummed at that. I found the match to be a little bit clunky, and I thought that they sort of moved away from Mika's strengths in terms of the grappling stuff until the very end where she submitted her with the armbar. So I was a little bit disappointed in the match. I didn't love it.
No, it looked a lot like two people having their second match ever, for sure. But there's just so much to like about Mika Nagano, I thought. Those spears that she hit in this match, which were super stiff. I agree about the look thing. I enjoyed the look from before, but it's just, if this were 2011, I would be thinking this is a star in this business. Next
Interesting, because I thought that after the first match, and I didn't think it after the second match.
I'm still on the Mika Nagano train, for sure. Big fan. The next match was Ari Sahoshiki taking on Nanae Takahashi, and Nanae wins with a top rope splash. This was pretty good, I thought. It's fast-paced, hard-hitting, all the stuff I like. Now, Arisa gets blown up a little toward the end, and the match kind of falls off, I thought. But when she hits that Brazilian kick, the crowd is still, like, amazed by it. And you can see, I'm trying to think of this as if I'm watching it for the first, I am watching it for the first time, but as if I don't know what happens later. And so she strikes me here as like really somebody to watch going forward, even if she's not grabbing me as much as Mika Nagano is.
Yeah, I think she looked really good. The one caveat would be, I think that, and we'll talk about this in the next show as well, that any of these women wrestling Nanae makes them look good, because Nanae is so good at both giving offense, but she's also very good at taking offense. And she makes everyone she fights look good. And so it's sort of natural that you wrestle a veteran, she won the 2010 Joshi Wrestler of the Year award. So she obviously is very good. She made Hoshiki look very good in this match. The kicks, I agree with you, looked very good, looked very cool. And I think part of that is also credit to Nanai taking those kicks. But yeah, I think that Arisa looked good. She certainly is someone who I think, in my mind, is at the higher echelon of the rookies so far.
You keep teasing those rookie rankings.
I know. I keep teasing. You have to stay for another, 30 minutes to find out what I'll say.
That's right. Okay, the main event of this show, Yoko Bito and Iris taking on Natsuki Taiyo and Yoshiko. And the winner of the match was the Yoshiko and Natsuki Taiyo team. Yoshiko pinned Yoko Bito with a senton, and quite a disrespectful pin, I thought.
Yeah, I really liked this match. I thought it was a really good mix of 4 different styles. It wasn't all one style, Bito with the kicks and Yoshiko more of a power wrestler, and Natsuki Taiyo is sort of high speed, an agile wrestler. And I think we're about to go into a debate on Iris, who, to me, in this match looked just sort of fine for a wrestler who's now had 4 matches. I will say this. This was my favorite match on the show. So there is something to the fact that Iris has had the 2 best matches on the first 2 shows, or she's at least been involved in the first 2 matches, the best 2 matches of the first 2 shows of Stardom. But I thought it was a really great mix of talent, and a little bit of the first feud brewing between Yoshiko and Yoko Bito.
Yeah, so one of my notes for this match is literally, I will die on the Iris is good hill. I think she's good. I really like her.
I mean, no offense to her or to you, but the fact that in a few months she'll be totally done is probably a point more in my column than in your column.
See, what I think happened was she was so good that she just felt like there really wasn't anything else to accomplish in wrestling.
I'm not going to acknowledge that comment.
That's what happened. That's canon. That's exactly what happened. Sometimes when you are, a prodigy at something, it just burns you out quickly, Taylor. Maybe you've never experienced that in your life, but wow, when you're really good at something quickly, it can burn you out on it.
I do imagine now, the fact that you said that, I do imagine like a late night meeting where they call her in, a bunch of joshi representatives calling her into an office or some dark lit room, and they're like, we won't allow you to continue wrestling because you're making us all look bad, because you're so good. That's sort of giving me a kick. But wow, I didn't know that we were getting personal about our preferences of 2011 Stardom shows.
See, what really probably happens. This is what happened. I've caught up on the history. She is like 15, 16 years old at this point. She had this excellent tour in Japan, coming over from Mexico. And at the end of it, the Stardom powers that be told her, you're so good, you have to move to Japan and stay here so that we can train you properly. And she wasn't willing to abandon her family and move to Japan. And so she knew that going back to Mexico she wouldn't be as fulfilled as she had been on this tour of Japan. So she just decided to hang it up. That's the story of Iris.
And I should say, we're arguing this. I don't think that she's bad. I mean, as I mentioned, she is a wrestler who at this point had 4 matches in her whole career. And I've seen people much worse, much worse after more than 4 matches in their career. But to me, she's just someone in the match who is just sort of a body at this point, where they need 4 people and they say, oh, we have this person and we can sort of just squeeze them in and get through the match.
I'm really offended that you won't engage with my bits. I mean, I'm putting a lot of thought into them. I think they're well executed.
Although you did confuse me because I wasn't sure what part of the story that you just told of Iris was true or not. So I didn't want to engage any of it as to not have you at the end go, oh, I made all of that up and make me look very foolish.
No comment. I will never tell what of that was real. Okay, but talking about this match, I know, although maybe people who really hate Yoshiko have stopped listening because they know we're going to talk about Yoshiko on this podcast. So I know a lot of people hate her, but she rules is what I'm going to say. I'm not passing judgment on anything else that ever happened. But the point in this match where she threw Iris into the corner by her hair and then just dragged Yoko Bito in, no tag, just dragged her in and made her part of the match. It ruled. That was great. The Yoko Bito slap exchange toward the end of this match was so good. It's just that Bito Yoshiko, the burgeoning feud that you mentioned earlier, is something that I'm really enjoying early on in Stardom.
I think that Yoshiko is she's a much better tag wrestler than she is a singles wrestler. So this is sort of the ideal place to put her. And I also thought she looked very good because it allows her to come in, do her stuff, which usually looks pretty good. And there's no lull of sort of figuring out because you're one-on-one what to do next. You know, what to do next, you tag your partner in and then you have a moment and then you can come in and do a couple more things. So I think that tag matches, especially early on, you know, it's so early in her career at this point, really highlight her strengths and hide her weaknesses.
All right, moving on to the next show, the February 27, 2011 show. They're back at Shinkiba again. They ticked up the attendance a little bit. They went from 312 to 335. I say we just lump the first two matches together because we don't see much of them. So we had Yoko Bito versus Eri Susa and Yoko Bito versus Iris. In the Susa match, I am not good at Japanese in any way, shape, or form. But I think when it starts, they're doing the 5 minutes past call on the ring announcer is doing the 5 minutes past call. So I think we missed most of this match.
I think that's true because also when the pin happened, they showed a match time of something like 6 minutes and 27 seconds or something like that, which lines up with the video file was 3 minutes long, but about a minute of that is the second match, which for some reason appears twice on the show, weirdly. So I think that's right that it was probably around the 5 minute time because we saw about a minute and the show or the match was about 6.5 minutes.
But, I mean, I can't really draw much from either of these matches. Yoko Bito won both of them. I'm sure they were fine.
Yeah, I don't even have any notes because it's hard to have thoughts about a match that you see 58 seconds of. So, I don't have anything to say.
Next up was Sakura Hirota versus Haruka. And shockingly, Taylor, I don't know if you were expecting this when the match started, but it goes to a time limit draw.
Well, I'm going to say this, that I've enjoyed these matches. They've been very good. Haruka's got to start winning some of these matches. What's going on? You know, you can't move up the card if you don't win matches. If you're just doing time limit draws in the undercard, you're not going to advance your career, especially against someone like Hirota, who usually gets, beaten like a drum everywhere she goes, losing matches left and right. So I'm pulling Haruka. You got to pull out a win. Come on. I'm really rooting for it.
Maybe that's why she quit wrestling. She wasn't getting a strong enough push. She needed more respect from the bookers.
Maybe.
This was basically a normal Sakura Hirota match, even 9 years ago. And Haruka continued to rule as she has in every other match she's been involved in. Yeah,
she was great. There was some pre-match comments that I read about that Hirota wanted to make this a best of 3 match, that when Hirota was 8 years old when Hirota was 8 years old and Haruka was not alive, that somehow Hirota had determined that Haruka beat her at that point. So then they moved forward 24 years because in this match, Hirota is 32 and Haruka is 8. And that would be the second of 3 matches. And then in another 24 years, when Haruka is 32 and Hirota is 56, they would have the third and final match of this 3-match series. So this is technically match 2 of 3 that goes to a draw.
Well, what lore there. Amazing. All right, next up we had Nanae Takahashi versus Mayu Iwatani, and Nanae wins again with a splash. Mayu is crying before this match starts. Do you have any idea why?
Yeah, that was my first note as well, is that I put a note that says Mayu crying, ? I'm not really sure of that. Maybe it's because she was wearing those same pants again that I didn't like. Those uneven pant legs. I don't know. Maybe she was very nervous. Maybe she, I don't know, felt unprepared or something like that. I couldn't determine, but then the match starts and she seems to fairly quickly get into it, and whatever the issue is goes away, because at one point she stands in the middle of the ring when Nanae's on the floor making these very strange faces at her. Sort of scary faces to mock her, I guess, but whatever the reason was, it disappeared fairly quickly.
Mayu is a very anxious and very strange young woman. I don't think there's any debate about that. So who knows? It could literally have been anything. The match itself was not that special, I didn't think. Not a great Mayu showing for me.
Yeah, I agree. Again, my note was that Nanae makes her look good, but it wasn't a great match. And not to tease again, but this will be all revealed in my rankings that we'll do in mere minutes now.
We're almost there, because next up is the main event of this show. A quick show. This was Natsuki Taiyo and Yoshiko versus Arisa Hoshiki and Yusuke Aikawa. And Natsuki Taiyo got the pin on Arisa with moonsault. Again, Yoshiko was probably my favorite part of this match. The parts with her and Aikawa going at it were really good. I thought this dragged a little in the middle, but overall, very good match.
Yeah, I liked it. I thought Yoshiko brought a good change of pace in terms of her style. I really felt at the end, in the last few minutes, that a lot of the women were very tired. It appeared, Aikawa at one point took some move and then sat up or something, and the camera zoomed in on her face, and she looked like she was totally spent. And I could sort of feel it in the way the match sort of came to the end, where the energy just wasn't really there, which is certainly not unusual for people who are starting out their career to, sort of tire or fatigue closer to the end of the match. Obviously, the main event is going to go the longest of any of these comparatively to matches that are going 6 minutes or 3 minutes or something like that. So I did feel a little bit of the tiredness of the wrestlers at the end, which I think detracted a little bit from the match for me.
After the match, Yusuke was trying to get in Natsuki Taiyo's face, but Yoshiko intervened to stop the problem that was forming between the two of them. Strangely, too, because I believe on the next show, two of these people tag on the next show. And I was like, that's very strange considering what happened at the end of this show.
Yeah, there is some strange sort of, they seem to be setting up feuds, and then on the next show, they seem to go away. Like they had the Yoshiko Bito feud, which sort of lasted the first 2 shows, and then seemingly not on this show, because Bito was in the opening 2 matches. So I don't know what their plan was, if they were just sort of trying to get people experience with different combinations just to sort of help them improve. I don't know if that was the goal, or if they were maybe trying to set up long-term sort of multi-show feuds. I guess as we continue this, I guess we'll find out what the answer is.
Yeah, the main event of the next show is Natsuki Taiyo and Yusuke Aikawa versus Mayu Iwatani and Yoko Bito. So they get in each other's faces and then they're teaming on the next show. All right, well, I think it's time, Taylor, to...
Is it officially time for the big moment?
to break out our Stardom rookie 2011 rookie rankings. So you have the floor, my friend.
Okay, I'm just looking. I don't want to miss anyone. Well, why don't we go alternate? So we have 5 rookies, correct? 1, 2, 3. Because I'm not going to count Haruka as a child.
So we got
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
We've got Yusuke
7.
Aikawa. We got Eiri Susa, Mika Nagano, Mayu Iwatani, Arisa Hoshiki, and Iris, if you want to count Iris. So 6.
6. Okay. So my number 6, I'm starting with Eiri Susa.
Yeah, I agree with that. I haven't actually written this out, but I'm going to just go with it.
I haven't either, and I'm looking at the card trying to make sure I don't forget anyone.
Yeah, I might start making a document here so that I don't fuck this up.
Okay, so number 6, Eiri Susa. Number 5, because we're counting her, I'm going to put Iris.
This is so hard for me because I really like Iris, but she honestly hasn't gotten a chance to do much so far. Like, we haven't seen her in a real singles match. You know, just that little match with Yoko Bito, but she hasn't gotten the chance that Mayu or Arisa have had. So I'll agree with you. I'll go with Iris 5th.
All right. Wow. Maybe we might end up having the same list, which would be really exciting to listen to.
Great audio.
Number 4, I am going to go with Mayu Iwatani.
Okay. Well, hold on. Let's talk about this. Are we doing this based on who we just subjectively, personally think is the best? And if so, is that based on just how they are right now, what we think about their future outlook? I mean, what's the criteria here, Taylor?
I would say the criteria is what you thought of their, I guess this is what I'm doing, what you thought of their in-ring ability on the first 3 shows. I mean, that's largely what I'm basing it on, sort of. It's always very hard to predict the future. Obviously, we know the future, which makes it sort of even harder to not bias ourselves towards one wrestler or another who we know does well. But I was just basing it mostly on how they looked on the first 3 shows that we watched.
Okay, that's fair. All right, I'm with you then. So you have Mayu 4th.
Yes, and then 3rd. No, there are 7. You said there's 6, but there's 7 because I'm still seeing 4 wrestlers that we can rank. So Mayu is 5.
Who am I missing?
Eiri Susa is 7. Iris is 6. Mayu is 5. Number 4 for me is going to be Arisa Hoshiki.
Okay, I'm still not sure who I'm missing if there's 7. This is compelling. This is really good, I think. Okay, Yusuke Aikawa 1.
Yes.
Eiri Susa 2. Mika Nagano 3. Mayu Iwatani 4. Arisa
Mika
Hoshiki...
Nagano. Wait a minute. Hold on. Wait, time out.
I'm just listing them.
This is really good audio.
I'm just trying to figure out how many there are at this very moment in time.
Ready? Here we go. Yoko Bito. Eiri Susa.
Hold on, is Yoko Bito a rookie? No.
Yes. What are you talking about?
Okay, I wasn't counting Yoko Bito.
Wait a minute. Hold on. I'm gonna go on her cage match. I'm looking at matches.
No, Yoko Bito. It was her second match. Was the first Stardom show after a 3-minute time limit draw with Eiri Susa.
So she is a rookie.
Okay, and I guess Yoshiko was a rookie too, wasn't she? I wasn't.
Yes.
I'm just like assuming all these people are veterans suddenly for some dumb reason.
So wow, is it Yoko Bito, Eiri Susa? See, I don't count Mika because she wrestled for Ice Ribbon. Now, she only had 1 match.
All right.
So are we counting?
Let me look at her cage match, and I will make the official determination.
I feel like I need to write these down.
Yeah, that's so. She had 2 matches in 2009.
Yeah, one on a freelance show and one an ice ribbon.
Well, no, I got 2 ice ribbon matches.
Oh,
1 exhibition match, a 3-minute time limit draw, 1 real match, and then a grappling match that I'm not counting.
right.
And that was
so is she a rookie? But that was 2 years ago.
I know, that's tough. I don't think for the observer, I don't think she'd be a rookie. But all right, we don't have to rank Mika Nagano.
I mean, we can.
And it's sad looking her cage match and realizing we're almost through her entire career. Yeah. That breaks my heart, really. Okay, so are we including Mika or no?
Sure, let's include her just for fun.
Okay.
What the hell?
All right.
Okay, so I'm writing everyone down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yoko, Arisusa, Iris, Mayu, Mika, Yoshiko, Arisa, and Aikawa.
Okay. Silence as I try to figure out my list here is good, I think. Very
okay. So, well, I'll start with 8 while you sit and think of your list. Because 8 is still, for me, going to be Arisusa.
Okay, so there's 8 people. I think I'm happy with mine. So, yes, 8 Arisusa. We agree on that. And I think we agreed that Iris is 7th.
Yes. I agree that Iris is 7th.
Okay. Go ahead with your 6th selection.
Okay, so my 6th pick is going to be... Ooh.
Should we have done this as a draft instead? Would that have been more interesting?
What? No.
No? You don't think so?
Wait, a draft of what? We just each pick 4 people?
Yeah, we just go back and forth.
I mean, we could probably do both after we do these rankings, although I have the way things are going, we might have the same identical rankings.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, now I'm torn now. I'm trying not to bias myself, knowing the future. I'm gonna say my number 6 is going to be Mayu. I think that first Mika match, I think only judging on these 3 matches, that first Mika match was so good to me. She looked so cool. She's so unique that to me that she would rank ahead of Mayu. That was my unsuredness on those 2.
Yeah, well, I also have Mayu here, but we're about to depart.
Oh, okay, because my number 5 would be Mika.
I'm putting Arisa Hoshiki in 5th.
Interesting.
And so there are going to be people who listen to this who know me who are going to think, and my dog is growling in the back. I don't know if you can hear that. But there are people who know me who are going to say that I'm being biased against Arisa because I now hate her. But I've actually, watching these first Stardom shows has softened me up on Arisa for some reason. I've just really enjoyed her matches. So, but she doesn't strike me at this point as good of a prospect as the person I have in 4th place. But this is something I want to discuss at this point about Mayu and Arisa. I think, so this was hard for me because obviously we talked about this last episode that Mayu becomes the bigger star. But it looks at this point like the promotion is more behind Arisa than Mayu at this point.
Yes, I would agree. Now, it is early. I don't know. You mentioned the main event of the next show has Mayu in it.
Yes.
So I don't know if that shifts. I haven't looked at any of the future cards, so I'm not spoiled on who gets bigger. I don't know if it was just a factor of that it seemed like she was more prepared early on and they just wanted to put the more prepared wrestlers closer to the top of the card. I don't know. But I would probably agree with you that she looks like the more pushed of the 2 wrestlers at the moment.
Even though she failed her protest.
That's true, but maybe she, once she passed, that gave her the confidence and she really rocketed up really ramped up her ability.
So you had Mika 5th and I had Arisa 5th, right?
Yes, although we're not far off because Arisa would be my number 4.
Right, and I'll have Mika Nagano here. I'm very high on her.
And then my number this gets hard.
It does. The top three is really hard.
Man, I am going to go. I am going to go. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go with Yoshiko. Only for the fact that she's so different than the sort of look and style of the other wrestlers, that I think if I had watched these 3 shows knowing what the promotion is going for, that I would be more concerned that she might not succeed because she doesn't really fit in with the aesthetic of the company.
That's fair. I'm going with Yoko Bito third, largely just because I think the 2 people I have ahead of her, I thought their highs were higher than Yoko Bito.
Which is fair. I debated between Yoshiko and Yoko Bito for that spot, so I could see putting her in that spot as well. I think the top 3 are all fairly close in my mind to me. It's sort of 1 through 3 are very close, 4 and 5 are close, and then sort of 5, 6, 7 are sort of close for me. That's what I would do. I would put Yoko Bito in number 2.
This is fascinating to me. So I thought I would be going out on a limb by putting Yusuke Aikawa first. I was like, oh, I'll do this, and that'll be compelling because Taylor won't do that. But you did.
You don't know me. I
don't.
I mean, my reasoning is, look, she had an extra match, which I think probably helped. She had that match with Nanai, which we both really enjoyed, which shows that she can, at least against a veteran, someone with some experience, can have a good match. She had the good tag match, which we both really enjoyed in the first show. And then she had this third tag, which, we weren't blown away by it, but it was still very good. She has a good look to me. Maybe some of it is biased towards the fact that we know that the promotion was sort of built around her as well, which sort of makes it obvious that she would be number 1. But to me, she's been the most impressive in-ring wrestler for me through the first, well, now technically 4 matches of hers that we've seen. So to me, it was pretty easy. I mean, I don't know that Yoko Bito would have... I don't know that I give any consideration to Bito being ahead of her.
No, I was picking for number 1 between Yoshiko and Yusuke Aikawa. It's just, and I guess I don't know how long these other people were training, but it's just something so impressive to me. I'm probably having a little bias here of Aikawa going from being a model and training and wrestling for 6 months and coming out this good. It just blows me away.
Yeah, so a little bit, we ended up diverging a little bit. We thought we were going to have identical lists, but it's a little bit different. It'll be interesting as we continue doing these to see, maybe we should do them every show and just see the way in which our, the rating shifts, and soon we'll have more rookies to consider. So maybe people will graduate off the list. Well, once we figured out what the hell we were doing, that was very interesting to me to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about that. We can definitely do that going forward. So those are the second and third Stardom shows. I guess I should save my rankings so I know what I said on this one. I'll throw that over into our run sheet. So that's it for those. I'm sure we'll continue going through these shows since there's not a whole lot else going on. The other show that we watched was Sendai Girls July 2, 2016. Big show in Niigata. This is newly on independentwrestling.tv. I think last week or so it went on there. And like I said at the beginning of the show, if you haven't watched this yet, you can use the code Sendai to get a 5 free day trial, and watch this bad boy for free.
Yes, and I believe they're going to be putting more shows on. They did have an announcement when they first talked about that they had reached an agreement with Sendai Girls, a partnership. So I'm imagining more shows will be coming. It's a bit difficult to say what those shows will be. We don't know. And obviously, there aren't really. Sendai Girls hasn't run any fan shows. So not sure if they will be putting up current stuff or if it will largely be shows like this, sort of historical big shows from the history of the promotion.
All right, this show, and frankly, to me, if you agree with this, Taylor, this is like a 1, maybe 2 match show.
Yeah, I think to me, it's a 1 match show. It was they did 3 big shows for their 10th. It's their 10th anniversary, which is part of why they were doing these big shows. And to me, looking through the other shows, they had a show in Sendai, which is obviously their home base, as they are Sendai Girls, and they had a show in Korakuen Hall. I think looking at the cards of each, obviously the main event of the show is really big. It was a big deal. But I think this is probably the weakest show on the undercard for me, looking at those other 2 shows.
Yeah, so my thought is mostly to just kind of talk about some of our thoughts on the undercard rather than go match by match. I'm not sure there's anything that interesting to say about most of the show. But to me, this is like, it's kind of a classic Sendai Girls show in that the undercard is kind of there and the show is dragged along by the top of the card. And unfortunately, this was at a time in Sendai Girls when your semi-main here involves Chihiro Hashimoto and Dash Chisako, and they're just like not at the level yet to really carry it in the way that they are nowadays. And I say this as someone who's a huge fan of Sendai Girls. It's probably maybe my second favorite promotion, joshi promotion after Stardom. I really enjoyed the promotion, but it's just kind of just how it is. You get an Iger match, you get a 6-person tag match that goes on too long, then you get like 2 really strong matches up top.
Yeah, I found it actually most interesting as sort of a historical artifact of, 2016. This was mid-2016, and I started watching joshi, I think at the end of 2015 or around there. So this show was really sort of a little bit of a blast from the past for me. An Alex Lee match. And Alex Lee, when I first started watching joshi, was seemingly on every show in an undercard match. And I saw her so many times, and now she's wrestling slightly less than she used to. So I don't see her as much. It was good seeing that. Seeing Shirai pre-MMA departure was very fun for me. She was someone I was a big fan of before she left for UFC. I was sort of bummed that she left, obviously happy for her success, but I had really enjoyed watching her. So it was fun. It was sort of the most fun I had from the undercard was sort of seeing these matchups and wrestlers that maybe I see a little bit less nowadays. Obviously, Kyoko Kimura is retired, so I don't see her at all. So that was good seeing her. But yeah, I wasn't really blown away by anything on the undercard, including the semi-main tag title match, which sort of lived in the area of it was sort of just there for me.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. A few things that, are just kind of noteworthy. If you are checking the show out, coming from the Everything Elite show, Nyla Rose is on this show. It's kind of fun to see where she was 4 years ago. Hikaru Shida's in the same match. So I think that's interesting in some ways, although that match is not that fun and is very long. It was fun to see Shirai there in with a very different look than she has nowadays. I enjoyed the semi-main tag match with Chihiro and Dash. Chihiro is so strong even at this point, even though she's definitely not in the 200 kilogram club at this point in her career. But very strong, fun to see them as kind of young girls in a way. And so I was not watching Sendai Girls at this point, so it was fun for me to be able to see them at this part of their career. Now, the main event, I don't know about you, Taylor, but I thought it was excellent. I when I turned it on, so I didn't know anything. I didn't know the finish. I didn't know anything about it coming in. But it's for the Sendai Girls World Title. Io comes out wearing Stardom's red belt, and poor Sarah, who just has to hear, my wife, who just has to hear my random wrestling thoughts, was sitting near me, and I was like, "Oh, this match is going to a draw." She's like, "What are you talking about?" You know, she didn't care, obviously. I was like, "Well, Io's the red belt champion. Meiko's the Sendai Girls champion. Meiko's not going to lose on her own show. Io's not going to lose while she's the red belt champion." So I just assumed that's what was happening. And I was like, wow, really impressive how hard they're going for a match that's going to go to a draw. and then it didn't. Meiko wins this one with about 20 Death Valley drivers in a row.
Yeah, I also thought it was going to a draw because the match started and it said, oh, there's a 30-minute time limit, and the video file still had 42 minutes left on it. And so in my mind, I thought to myself, I had already thought, oh, it's going to be a time limit draw. And then I paused to check how much time was left. And it said 42 minutes. And I went, oh, yeah, they're definitely going to a draw. I don't have any. I was watching back then. I don't know that if I watched this match at that time, like, I don't even remember if I've ever seen this match before. I would have to go back in my notes and see if I have it anywhere, which I don't think I do. But I was in the same boat as you, where I figured that they were going to go. I mean, I figured it was obvious they would go to a draw. It's something that happens with Meiko a lot, where she goes to these draws with the bigger names in joshi. So, yeah, the finish really surprised me as well.
It was a cool finish, though, where she hits like 3 or 4 Death Valley drivers in a row. And then the last one, Io fights to get over to the rope to kind of try to break it up. But Meiko pulls her away and just about broke Io's neck on the last one.
Yeah, dropped her directly on her head.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, gosh.
Oh, go ahead.
It also was, Io has not been in the joshi scene now for a few years. So I haven't seen her. I haven't seen her wrestle, so it was such a great reminder to me of how good she was at that point in time, which was probably 2016, might have been her peak in terms of how good she was. Obviously, she was winning tons of awards at that time. She was the most well-known joshi wrestler probably in the world. But she's so good. She has such a great combination for me of power and agility that so few people in all of wrestling have. I mean, the first person that comes to mind as well is someone like Kota Ibushi, who sort of combines some aspects of power wrestling with the agility that he has in terms of the dives and the splashes that he does, but the ability to stand in the ring and really, throw the suplexes, throw the strikes, which Io has that ability as well. So it was a very welcome reminder of how good Io was. I don't know if she's still that good. Haven't seen her wrestle in probably at this point 2 or 3 years. But yeah, it was very heartwarming to see such a talented wrestler again.
Yes, I too have not seen her in several years. And I think it was 2018, I think, is when she last wrestled in Stardom. So, since then I haven't seen her. And it was a welcome reminder of how good she was, but also just like how big of a star she was. Like her look, her confidence. She just knows how good she is. She does this spot in the match where she does a handstand into a knee drop. And then she just gets up and smiles at the crowd. And there's just a look on her face like, I'm fucking good, aren't I? Like, it's just amazing. But it brought into sharp relief for me what Stardom is missing without Io. I don't think they have anybody who has this level of star power. Like Hana Kimura is probably the closest, but she doesn't have the self-assurance that Io had at this point in her career. Hana might get there. She's very young, obviously. But they don't have that. And it also was a good reminder of why, with the way things were in 2018, why Io left to go to WWE. I mean, she pretty much had ascended as high as she could in the joshi scene. And it's easy for me to think that if the Stardom Bushiroad thing existed then, Io would have stuck around. And maybe she's interested in coming back at some point. But you can imagine why someone who's like that much bigger of a star than just about everybody else feels like, I need to go tackle something else. And so, I don't know, it was refreshing in a lot of ways to see her, also kind of sad, and just made me miss her and made me miss like this level of star power in Stardom.
Yeah, she really was the perfect combination, which is sort of what you alluded to, that she was an incredible in-ring worker. I mean, probably, if not the best, one of the best during that time period and for many years, with also the combination of the crowd connection, you know, the charisma, being a star. And I think there is a lot of people currently in Stardom that have one or the other, which a lot of wrestlers do, but it's very rare to find that combination of someone who is such a star, connects with the crowd, has a charisma, and also is really in a league of her own in terms of wrestling ability. I mean, I remember in those years, she was regularly ranking, you know, in the Wrestling Observer year-end awards. She was regularly ranking in the top 10 wrestlers in the world, and that includes the men. She was often in the top of those rankings, which nowadays I don't think anyone even really gets close at this point. So yes, it was a rare, I mean, her and Kairi Hojo was another one, maybe on a little bit less, but someone who was so good in ring and had the connection with the fans. It was sort of a rare period that Stardom got these, you know, and Mayu, maybe to even a little bit less extent, has that connection with the crowd and, of course, the in-ring ability. To have the three of them all in Stardom at the same time, working at a high level, you know, at their quote-unquote peak, it's something that it's rare and it's very hard to do in any wrestling in the world, is to get three amazing workers who connect with the crowd all at the same time, working so well. So, you know, in a way, it sounds like we're sort of faulting Stardom, but it's not an easy thing to do ever, to have this level of talent available to your promotion.
Oh, absolutely. No, it's not really Stardom's fault. I mean, there wasn't really an opportunity for them to grow any bigger at the time when Io and Kairi decided they wanted a different challenge, you know, so it's hard to blame anybody really in that situation. But it would be fun. Like, I think about the roster that Stardom has now and how fun it would be to see Io and Kairi mixing it up with Hana and Julia and Arisa back now at kind of a top level. That it would be fun. And something that I think there's a possibility we see it down the road somewhere.
Maybe, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. So that's all the stuff. Well, did you watch so there was a little treat match after the main event there from July 30, 2016. There was a Meiko Satomura versus Yoshiko match. Did you check it out, Taylor?
So I didn't even see that because the file ended and I said, oh, there's still 15 minutes. And I started sort of fast forwarding through and didn't see it. All I saw was Meiko making some backstage comments and thought, oh, this is the end of the video. So I missed it. You watched it?
Yeah, it was really good. I really liked it. Probably a 4-star or so match. We didn't say. How did you rate the Io Meiko match?
So I went 4.5 stars. I nearly went 4 3/4, but I ended up at 4.5.
I also went 4.5. So I thought it was a match of the year level match. But I'm a pretty stingy star rater, so not much gets above 4.5 for me.
And I'm a much less stingy rater, which is why I almost went 4 3/4. But I don't know, maybe the fact that it is historical, it's already happened. It was 4 years ago. Maybe in my eyes, you know, brings it down a little because they're sort of, oh, it happened. And, you know, I'm not now saying, oh, what's going to happen? You know, what's going to happen next? Because we sort of already know what happens, or we could look it up if we don't know it off the top of our head. So maybe that hurts
Right.
it a little.
That's fair. I was at 4 stars for the Meiko Yoshiko match, so I would suggest it to anyone. If you're going to watch the main event of this July 2 show, I would just fast forward a little bit and watch the Meiko Yoshiko match. It's very fun. Can't really suggest watching any of the rest of this Sendai Girls show.
No, unless you look at the card and you see someone who you're particularly a fan of, who maybe you want to see what they were up to 4 years ago. If you're an AEW fan and you want to check out Shida and Nyla Rose in that 6-person tag match, although I was on the same page with you that it went very long and they seemed to lose their way, so it's not an excellent match in my mind, but fun to see what they were up to now closing in on 4 years ago.
Yeah, and if you're a Mika Iwata fan or you miss Ayako Hamada, the opening match was pretty fun, I thought. It was a good opener.
Yeah, I thought it was good at that point. Mika was very young, so it was a good sort of opening veteran versus younger wrestler match.
So those are the shows that we watched for this week, or for this episode. On the next episode, I assume we will continue on with Stardom, and we'll see if there's anything else we want to watch. What first run new shows are coming up between now and our next show, Taylor?
So Ice Ribbon is running shows. They had a show. We're recording this on May 2nd, so they had a show today, a dojo show with some IWGQ tournament matches, also some non-tournament matches as well. They have a show coming up on May 4th, which is they were supposed to have their Yokohama big show on 5/4, which obviously now is not happening. So they're running a show on 5/4 as a slight sort of replacement. Choco Pro has a show on May 3rd at 10 a.m. Japan time, which means it will be, for those in the States, it'll be in the evening on May 2nd. They also have a show at 10 a.m. on May 4th, which means it'll be on May 3rd in the States. And then they have a one-match show with a last man, or I guess last person standing because it's intergender, a last person standing match on May 5th at 8 p.m. Japan time, which means it will be very early in the morning on May 5th in the United States. Marvelous, as I mentioned before, is going to be running dojo shows every other week on Fresh Live. Their next show is coming up on May 10th. And then the one after that will be obviously on May 24th. So those are the Joshi shows to look out to. Although at this period of time, some shows happen to be announced maybe mere days before with not a lot of notice. If we see any of those, we'll retweet those on our Twitter so that you're aware and can watch if you so desire.
All right. Well, I guess that's it for this week, and 2 weeks from now. This will come out on Monday, May 4th. And so our next episode would be scheduled for May 18th, if I'm doing the math right, which I'm probably not. But every other Monday, we come out with a podcast. So anything else you want to add, Taylor, before we get out of here?
No, I think that's it. I hope everyone is staying safe and is able to enjoy a little bit of wrestling to cheer them up during this strange time in our lives.
That's right. Couldn't agree more. If you want to reach out to us, we're at JBomb Audio on Twitter. I'm at Aaron Like the Car. Not Nate. I'm doing my spiel from Everything Elite. Whew. I'm at Aaron Like the Car. Taylor is at Tay Mambo. Check us out. Talk to us. Follow us. Let us know if you like the shows and what stuff you want us to talk about while we're in these weird times. So that's it. See you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.